I'm fascinated to learn that I serve in the United States House of Free Stuff, because that's what I've been hearing nonstop this entire week. There's an unlimited supply of money and resources, apparently, an unlimited supply of dollars that we can continue to print while devastating our economy, devastating the American dollar, and transforming our society by encouraging Americans to believe that there's a free lunch. And there ain't no free lunch. My wife is the product of a single mom growing up in Texas. Her mom worked multiple jobs to send her to college. She worked hard to be able to go to college. She left with $70-something thousand of student loans despite going to 2 top public universities in the state of Texas. And she's not asking for her loans to get repaid because she went there with a free will. She went there and made a choice. She could have chosen a different path. She chose to take the debt. I did the same thing when I went to law school at the University of Texas. I might not have chosen to go to law school if the loans hadn't been available, and that might be fine. What's the fundamental problem? Why has the cost of education skyrocketed in my lifetime at an inflation rate multiple times over virtually every other product and service in this country except for health care? Why is it up something like 3,000%? Is it perhaps because we're subsidizing the holy heck out of it? Just thinking perhaps that there might be a correlation to the availability, and massive widespread availability of subsidized student loans, the massive subsidization of K through 12 education and higher ed? Do we think there might be a correlation to why the costs have skyrocketed so much? But no, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle now walk in here and say, oh, well, we don't want to, we're not the party of big spenders. We got a chart here with $1.7 trillion on it with another chart saying cancel student debt. Who's paying for that? Does anybody in this body give a rat's rear end about who's paying for anything at all? No. Oh no, then they'll come out here and say $3 trillion of tax cuts. They don't care about economic growth and opportunity, but fine. Why don't we actually have a conversation about spending and taxes? No, we don't do that. We just spend money we don't have. That's what we did today in the continuing resolution to keep this government running. Oh my gosh, panic ensues if you dare question whether or not the government must be funded Saturday morning at 12:01 in the morning. What will the American people do? How will they function if the United States House of Free Stuff isn't doling out free stuff? No one's in this chamber, of course, just reminding the American people how this place doesn't work. We're now on 5.5 straight years of no amendments being offered on the floor of this august chamber. I'd just like to remind the American people every once in a while that what they saw about how a bill becomes a law is a complete fraud. See, there's a handful of people who get into a room and they decide what you're going to vote on. And the speaker knows it's true, and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle know it's true, and my colleagues on this side of the aisle know it's true because they did it when they were in the majority just as much as my colleagues on the other side of the aisle did it when they were in the majority. We get a massive bill dropped on our desk and we say, take it or leave it. Go offer an amendment in rules, they say. Never taken, never accepted. Always pre-chosen, always pre-gamed out. This is deliberation and debate. This is the constitutional order. What value is there for an election certificate if you can't use it? You come to the floor and you want to offer an amendment in good faith to try to make a piece of legislation better, and you can't do it. We got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 people max who decide everything that goes on in this chamber in all of their infinite wisdom. And then we come down and we look at the board and it's party line votes, and then it's walk out on the steps and go give a speech and go to the press and go on Twitter and go on Facebook and go talk about why you're voting no or yes. That's what we're relegated to in the United States House of Free Stuff. But today, we just voted to extend the funding of government with a continuing resolution, which is going to barrel us towards trillion-dollar deficit this year, give or take. Who knows? Does it matter? Does anybody know what the difference is between $1 trillion or $1.2 trillion? Does anybody know the difference between $29 trillion of debt or $30 trillion of debt? Nobody knows or cares in this chamber. Literally not a lick. We never talk about it. And then each side comes down on the floor and offers more spending for whatever their priority is. Defense, non-defense, mandatory spending, non-mandatory spending. If the unbelievably terrible circumstance occurred at Friday night at midnight of this government daring to pause, do the American people know that about 82% of it is on autopilot with mandatory spending? I mean, does that matter? When you walk out and a gaggle of reporters come up, with bated breath, oh no, there might be a government shutdown. It always gets paid back. 82% of it keeps running. And there's never a serious debate about what's actually happening here in the United States of America. We never sit down like a family or a small business, roll our sleeves up and decide how to spend money. Do you imagine if we actually had to adhere to a budget like any business or American family, and we actually had to sit down, Madam Speaker, at that table and not leave this chamber until we said our budget is $3 trillion or $4 trillion, whatever it is. Here's our income. Here's what we can spend. That's all we can do. Let's figure out our priorities. Well, we disagree. Do you want to fund NEA? Do you want to fund the Department of Education, XYZ? Do you want to fund the military? Do you want to fund specific B-52 bombers? Do you want to fund health care? Do you want to fund border security? Make a choice. We never make a choice, ever. Both parties, by the way, both leaders, we never make a choice. All we do is preen and posture and come down here with massive bills that have some of our priorities depending on who's in the majority. That's it. And again, we're relegated to being the United States House of Free Stuff. You got to call it free stuff because we're just printing the money to do the stuff. We're down here talking about, oh, we got to cancel the student debt. Well, man, wouldn't that be lovely? Who cares about the people who have already worked hard their whole lives to pay off their student loans, whether they be black, brown, white, male, female, who cares? They've worked their whole life. They paid off their student loans. They did what they were supposed to do. Or they're in the middle of paying off their student loans. Oh, no, let's just come down here. One of my colleagues just said $50,000, President Biden. He just picked that number out of the air. $50,000 of free stuff. Here you go. Somebody else chose not to go to college. Somebody else started a business, worked hard, borrowed money to run a business. Guess what? That money also had interest to my colleague from Michigan who was down here talking about, oh, the pain of interest. As if it's not as old as time, as if it's not biblical to say, hey, I don't have the money to do something. I would like to have the money to do something. How might I get the money to do something? I don't know. 1, get a job and earn the money, save the money. 2, ask for it from somebody who loves you. 3, borrow it. Okay, now what do you do with that? Go do something with it. Make a choice. Start a business. Start a lemonade stand. Go to college if you want. But oh no, let's just go pay off $1.7 trillion of debt. Doesn't matter if you went to school and got a degree in sociology or gender studies and you're floating around and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life. Oh no, let's pay off that $140,000. There ain't no free lunch. But we live in this fiction that we can just keep printing money. And the horrors of printing the money is not just that we have $30 trillion of debt. It's not just that we have rampant inflation. It's not just that we're undermining our dollar. It's not just that we're handing over power to China and every other country around the world to kick our rear ends. It's that we're funding a government to do things to us, to interfere with us. We're funding an FBI to target parents for daring to question the wisdom of school boards around this country. And then people say, oh, well, that's not true. You must be embellishing. It's not true. We just had hearings with the Attorney General of the United States. We just saw memoranda making it very clear that the FBI is targeting parents. We're funding that. For all Americans out there watching this, all 12 of you, we're funding that. We're taking dollars, we're borrowing dollars, spending money we don't have, and we're taking those dollars and we're funding an FBI to target parents. We're taking dollars and we're taking away dollars from police departments, and federal dollars are going in and funding programs allegedly to take the place of police, and then wondering why department stores are getting looted. And then you've got the White House press secretary today literally at the podium saying that's the fault of the pandemic, all of the looting. We're not talking about somebody breaking into a grocery store to buy a loaf of bread. We're talking about people swarming a department store and taking Gucci bags. Oh no, let's not enforce the law. Let's not enforce the rule of law. Let's blame it on the pandemic. Let's blame Border Patrol for whipping migrants, which was demonstrably and totally and clearly false. There is no shame coming from the press secretary's office of the White House. No lie that won't easily slip out about what's actually going on, like Border Patrol agents whipping migrants. No apology. All of those Border Patrol agents down there on the front lines, dealing with COVID, dealing with being outmanned, outgunned, dealing with cartels, no apology. But here we sit in the United States House of Free Stuff, funding the Department of Homeland Security not to secure the homeland, funding the Department of Education not to educate our kids other than to indoctrinate them to hate our country and to believe that they're racist for the color of their skin. $700 billion for a Department of Defense to now run climate training and to focus on chief diversity officers in the Department of Defense rather than focusing on, I don't know, blowing stuff up and killing people, which is what the Department of Defense, formerly known as the Department of War, is actually supposed to do.